She fled a snowstorm and found protection with a rancher who refused to surrender. The wind howled across the frozen plains of Vera, 6, a distant planet known for its harsh snowstorms and jagged ice ridges. The sky was a swirling mass of gray clouds, streaked with the faint green glow of the auroras that danced even in the middle of the day. Mara pulled her worn coat tighter around her shoulders, pressing forward against the cold. Every step was a struggle, her boots slipping on the thick layer of frost that covered the ground. Her breath came out in white clouds, mixing with the flurries that whipped against her face. She had been running for hours, though it felt like days. Her cargo freighter, the Aurora's Edge, had suffered a navigation failure, leaving her stranded far from the nearest outpost. At first she had tried to repair the ship herself, but the electronics were fried and the temperature was dropping too fast. She had no choice but to leave, hoping to find shelter before the storm claimed her completely. Mara's eyes scanned the horizon, searching desperately for any sign of life. That's when she saw it, a small glow flickering in the distance, barely visible through the blizzard.
Relief surged through her chest. A human presence.
Somewhere out there was warmth and maybe safety. The journey toward the light was treacherous. The snow clung to her clothes and hair, forming ice crystals that pricked her skin. Every step was heavier than the last, but she refused to give up. The glow grew brighter, revealing the shape of a domed structure nestled against a ridge. Smoke rose gently from a chimney, and the soft hum of machinery hinted at a source of heat inside. Finally, she reached the edge of the ridge. Her legs shook from exhaustion, and her vision blurred from the cold. Just as her knees began to buckle, strong arms caught her. "Whoa there, slow down," a deep voice said, calm but firm. Mara looked up to see a man with a weathered face framed by dark hair dusted with frost. He wore a heavy coat and a wide-brimmed hat, the kind she'd only seen in old holovids about frontier cowboys. Despite his rugged appearance, there was a gentle warmth in his eyes. I'm fine," Mara gasped, though her teeth chattered. "Not unless you get inside," he replied, his grip steady. "Come on, you're not going anywhere in this storm." Each step inside the building brought Mara a sense of relief she hadn't felt in hours. The warmth hit her like a wave, and she sank onto a bench near a small heater. Her gloves were wet and her clothes clung to her skin, but the room smelled of wood, metal, and something else, something clean and comforting. "You're lucky I was around," the man said as he set her down. "Name's Colt Vega. What's yours?" "Mara," she replied softly. She had been too tired to speak much, but the sound of another human voice made her heart pound with hope. "You've been walking a long way," Colt said, moving to adjust the heater. "I've got some blankets and hot tea. You'll need both." Mara nodded, shivering. She watched as Colt retrieved thick, soft blankets and wrapped them around her. He poured a steaming cup of tea into a metal mug and handed it to her. She took a cautious sip, savoring the warmth that spread through her chest. "This place, it's a ranch?" Mara asked, looking around. The dome was filled with strange but fascinating technology. Small robotic devices moved quietly along the walls, tending to plants in hydroponic trays. Outside she had seen strange shapes moving, but the snow had hidden them. Colt smiled faintly. "Something like it. I raise livestock for the extreme climates of this planet. Some call me stubborn, but I call it preparation. Out here you need to be ready for anything." Mara nodded, still too exhausted to ask too many questions. She sipped her tea and let herself relax for the first time in hours. Yet even in the warmth, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, not by a person, but by something else. Her freighter's cargo had been important. She didn't fully understand it yet, but she sensed that someone or something wanted it badly. Colt seemed to notice her distant gaze. "You've got worries," he said quietly, pulling up a chair. "Out here, we all do, but you're safe inside these walls. Nothing gets in without me knowing." Mara let out a small, relieved laugh. "I hope you're right." For the next few hours, Colt helped Mara dry off and regain some warmth. She noticed that the dome wasn't just a shelter. It was a small, self-sufficient ecosystem. There were shelves of preserved food, a compact generator humming quietly, and a small pool of water that glowed faintly, filtered by some advanced technology she didn't recognize. A robotic assistant, small and round, rolled up to them and beeped. Its single glowing eye scanned Mara before it emitted a cheerful chime. "That's Clip," Colt said. "Keeps the place running while I do the heavy work outside. Friendly enough, but don't let it near your tea. It tends to overheat liquids." Mara chuckled, feeling a spark of hope. Even in a frozen, hostile world, kindness still existed. Night fell quickly on Vera. The storm outside intensified, howling around the dome, but inside, the warmth and light created a safe bubble. Mara and Colt sat by the heater, talking quietly. She told him fragments of her story, about the freighter, the cargo, and the malfunction that left her stranded. Colt listened patiently, never interrupting. "You've been through a lot," he said finally, "and it looks like you still have miles to go. But you've got something important with you, don't you?" Mara hesitated. She didn't fully trust anyone yet, not after so many years of traveling alone. But Colt's calm, steady presence made her feel safe enough to speak. I don't know exactly what it is," she admitted. "Something from the freighter. People are looking for it." "I think," Colt nodded thoughtfully, "then we'll figure it out, one step at a time. Out here, you survive by being smart, by trusting the right people, and by keeping your wits about you. You've got the last part down. I'll help with the rest." She had expected a harsh, unwelcoming frontier, but instead she had found someone willing to offer protection and guidance. For the first time since the freighter failed, she allowed herself to hope. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, the dome glowed warmly, full of quiet energy and strange technology that hummed softly in the background. Mara curled up under the blankets, sipping her tea slowly, feeling safe for the first time in what seemed like forever. She watched the flickering lights of the auroras through the dome's translucent ceiling, a reminder that the universe was vast and full of dangers, but also full of wonders. As she drifted toward sleep, a thought nagged at the back of her mind. She wasn't alone in the universe, and someone, or something, was tracking her. But for now, with the warmth of the dome and the presence of Colt Vega, she felt that she could rest. The storm outside would pass, and tomorrow she would face whatever came next. For the first time in a long while, Mara allowed herself to believe that survival didn't always mean running. Sometimes it meant finding a place to stand, and a person willing to stand with you. Morning broke slowly on Veira 6. The storm had passed, leaving the snow-covered plains sparkling under the faint green glow of the auroras. Mara stretched under the warmth of the blankets, her body stiff but her mind alert. She glanced around the dome. The small space was still humming with life, the soft mechanical whirs of clip, the robotic assistant, the bubbling of a water filtration system, and the faint rustle of strange, shimmering plants growing in hydroponic trays. Colt Vega was already awake, moving around the dome with quiet efficiency. He adjusted the small panels controlling the heating system and checked the energy readouts on the walls. Mara watched him, intrigued. He moved with a careful balance of strength and precision, as if every action had a purpose. She realized that surviving on this harsh planet required more than courage. It required intelligence, patience, and planning. "You up?" Colt asked without turning around. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of amusement. Mara sat up, rubbing her arms. "Yes." I didn't hear you move." "I move quietly," he said simply. "If you're going to stay here, you'll need to learn to do the same. Out there, noise can mean trouble." Mara nodded. Though the dome seemed safe, she could feel the truth of his words. The world outside was unpredictable. "What is this place exactly?" she asked. Colt smiled faintly. "A ranch. But not like the ones you see on Earth. Or anywhere else, probably. I raise animals that can survive extreme cold, and I grow food in ways most people don't even think about. Everything here is designed to survive Veira's storms. And I've been doing it for a long time." Mara's curiosity grew. She had always traveled light, never staying long in one place. But the thought of this dome, this small bubble of life in a frozen world, fascinated her. "Animals? What kind?" "Bioengineered," Colt explained, opening a small door to a section of the dome that led outside. "Not dangerous, don't worry, just different." Mara followed him outside, pulling her coat tighter. The snow crunched under her boots, and the air was crisp, almost painfully cold. The ranch looked even stranger in daylight. There were no fences made of wood. Instead, thin, shimmering energy barriers enclosed pens, where creatures moved slowly, their thick fur glistening under the light of the auroras. Some looked like oversized goats with metallic-tipped horns. Others had long, feathered tails and glowing eyes, though they were calm, even friendly. "These are amazing," Mara whispered. "Do they eat normal food?" "Mostly," Colt said, watching her reactions carefully. "But I feed them nutrient packs when the snow gets too deep. They need to survive the winter, same as we do." Mara reached out to one of the larger creatures. Its fur was soft, warm, despite the freezing air, and it nuzzled her hand with surprising gentleness. She laughed, a sound of pure joy that hadn't been heard in the dome for days. "You'll get used to them," Colt said. "They're part of the ranch's family, just like you'll be if you stick around." For the next few hours, Colt showed Mara how the ranch worked. He explained how he collected water from underground sources, how the energy fields kept snowdrifts from burying the pens, and how he tracked weather patterns to anticipate storms. Mara listened closely, absorbing every detail. She had never imagined a place like this could exist on such a harsh planet. As they worked together, Mara realized something important. Colt was not just surviving, he was thriving, and he had done it alone, for years, without relying on anyone else. She felt a mixture of admiration and curiosity. What made him so determined to stay here, in this frozen wilderness? By midday, they returned to the dome. Mara was exhausted but satisfied, her mind buzzing with new knowledge. As she removed her boots and gloves, she noticed something outside the dome, a faint set of tracks in the snow leading toward the ridge. She froze. "Colt," she whispered. He turned, his expression serious. "What is it?" "These tracks, someone or something came through last night," Mara said. "I don't know if they're following me, but—" Colt walked to the window, his eyes narrowing as he studied the tracks. "Could be animals," he said cautiously, "or could be curious travelers. Nothing too threatening. Yet, we'll keep an eye on it." Mara nodded, though a flicker of worry remained. Even in the warmth of the dome, she could feel that the universe outside was vast and unpredictable. Later that afternoon, as snow continued to drift gently outside, Mara helped Colt with some small repairs. He showed her how to adjust the energy barriers around the pens and how to monitor the automated systems from the control panel inside the dome. Mara's hands moved carefully, but she quickly got the hang of it. Colt watched her silently, clearly impressed. "You learn fast," he said finally, leaning against the counter. "That'll serve you well if you're planning to travel with anything fragile or dangerous, like the freighter cargo you mentioned." She hadn't expected him to remember that, let alone bring it up so casually. I don't fully understand it yet," she admitted. "It was just supposed to be cargo, but someone is looking for it. I think they've been following me for a while." "Then we need to be smart. Out here, survival isn't about fighting. It's about staying one step ahead. I can help you hide, protect it, make sure no one finds it." Mara felt a wave of relief. She had feared being alone again, facing unknown pursuers without help, but Colt's calm determination gave her hope. "Thank you," she said softly. Evening came, and the auroras painted the sky in shimmering green and violet streaks. Mara and Colt sat by the heater inside the dome, sharing a simple meal of preserved fruits and warm broth. Clip rolled around them, chirping cheerfully, occasionally bumping Mara's boot as if reminding her to relax. "You know," Colt said after a while, "you don't have to tell me everything, but I can tell there's more to you than what you've said. And that's okay. Everyone has a story." Mara looked at him, surprised by the honesty in his voice. For the first time in months, she felt she could trust someone without fear. She didn't reveal the full details of the cargo or the freighter's failure, but she shared small truths about traveling alone, about the loneliness of the stars, and about the fear of never finding a safe place to rest. Colt listened, nodding quietly, never interrupting, never judging. As night deepened, Mara noticed movement outside again. Shadows flitted across the snow, faint but deliberate. Her heart raced. She turned to Colt. "They're back," she whispered. Colt's eyes were calm, but his posture stiffened. "Probably scouts," he said. "Or just curious travelers. Doesn't matter. We'll be ready. You've learned a lot today, about the ranch, about survival, and tomorrow we'll use that knowledge to make sure nothing comes near this dome without us noticing." Despite the creeping tension, she felt a sense of strength growing within her. She wasn't helpless. She had a safe place, guidance, and someone willing to protect her. And she had begun to understand that survival wasn't just about avoiding danger. It was about using your mind, learning quickly, and trusting those who earned it. The night outside was quiet, but the auroras danced across the sky, a reminder that the universe was vast and full of mysteries. Mara curled up under her blanket, watching the lights flicker. The tracks in the snow, the shadowy movements, the unknown pursuers, these things still lingered in her mind. But for now, she allowed herself a rare sense of peace. With Colt Vega and Clip at her side, Mara realized that she had found more than just shelter from the storm. She had found protection, guidance, and a place where she could begin to understand what it meant to survive, and perhaps to belong. And as sleep took her, she silently promised herself she would not be easy to find. She would learn, adapt, and face whatever came next with the skills Colt was teaching her. Out here, in the frozen plains of Vera, 6 she would not just survive, she would endure. The morning sun rose slowly over the snow-covered plains of Vera. 6, casting long shadows across the domed ranch. Mara stretched her body stiff from the previous day's work and looked out at the landscape. The snow sparkled under the faint auroras, and for a moment the planet seemed peaceful. But she knew better. The tracks in the snow from last night had not gone away. They wound across the ridge, as if someone, or something, was observing the ranch from a distance. Colt was already outside, checking the energy barriers around the pens. The creatures stirred quietly, sensing the chill but moving calmly within their protected zones. Mara stepped beside him, shivering slightly from the cold, but her gaze never left the distant tracks. "They didn't move much overnight," Colt said, squinting at the snow. "Probably scouts. Curious, careful. They want something, but they're not willing to risk the storm yet." "Scouts? From the freighter?" "Could be," Colt said. "Or someone else interested in whatever you brought here. Doesn't matter right now. What matters is that we make sure they never get close to this dome." Mara nodded, a mixture of worry and determination settling in her chest. She had come a long way in a single day, learning about the ranch, helping with repairs, even interacting with the strange, gentle creatures Colt raised. But now, the stakes felt higher. She had to protect the cargo, and she had to survive. Colt led her to a small platform beside the dome where he stored tools and supplies. "I'm going to show you a few things," he said. "Things that might help you if anyone comes close. Out here, brains beat brawn every time." Mara watched as he activated a panel, and thin beams of light formed around the dome's perimeter. The energy barriers hummed softly, invisible at first but then glinting faintly in the sunlight. "These keep out anything that shouldn't be here," Colt explained. "Animals, snowdrifts, even people who aren't careful. You'll help me adjust them today." For hours, Mara learned how to read the sensors, adjust the beams, and monitor the automated alarms that Clip managed. The robotic assistant rolled beside her, occasionally chirping encouragement or nudging her to correct a small error. Mara found herself smiling, feeling a small spark of confidence she hadn't felt in months. By midday, Colt suggested a break. They stood on a small ridge overlooking the ranch, sipping warm tea from metal mugs. The snow stretched endlessly in every direction, interrupted only by the dome, the pens, and the jagged ice ridges beyond. "You've got a good head on your shoulders," Colt said quietly. "Most travelers wouldn't last a day out here without giving up. You've adapted quickly." Mara hesitated, thinking about the freighter and the long journey that had brought her here. "I've had to," she admitted. "I've survived worse. But this is different. You make it feel like a place I could belong." Colt glanced at her, his expression unreadable for a moment, then softened. "That's the idea. Out here you either belong or you get lost in the snow. And I don't like losing things, or people, who need a chance to stand." The words warmed Mara more than the tea ever could. For the first time she felt she was not just surviving but learning how to live in a harsh world with someone she could trust. But the sense of peace did not last. In the late afternoon, Mara noticed movement again. Far off the ridge, a faint shimmer of light reflected against the snow. Too small to be a creature, too precise to be random. She froze. Colt noticed immediately. "You see that?" he asked. "They're back. They're studying us," Colt said calmly, though his eyes narrowed. "They're trying to figure out if the dome is worth approaching." "That's good for us. It means we can prepare." Mara's stomach tightened. She had expected danger, but watching the distant movement made it feel real. She felt a mix of fear and determination. She would not let them get what they wanted, not here, not anywhere near the ranch. Colt smiled faintly. "Time to show you how we protect this place without anyone getting hurt. Follow me." He led Mara to a workshop filled with strange equipment. There were small drones, holographic projectors, and energy emitters she had never seen before. "We're going to create illusions," Colt explained. "The freighter scouts, or anyone else, will see things that aren't really there. We'll make them think the dome is empty, dangerous, or just not worth the trouble." Mara's eyes widened. "Holograms? Like tricks?" "Exactly," Colt said. "Out here, brains beat brawn. We'll make the environment work for us, confuse them, and keep the ranch safe. You'll help me set it up." For the next several hours, Mara and Colt worked together. They positioned projectors along the ridge, programmed clip to activate small drones and set energy patterns to create shimmering illusions in the snow. Mara learned quickly, her hands steady, her mind sharp. She felt a sense of pride she hadn't known in years. As night fell, they tested their defenses. Small, harmless lights flickered along the perimeter of the ranch, projecting illusions of movement, of shadows, and even of strange creatures that did not exist. The snow seemed alive with phantom shapes, a forest of ghosts made of light and energy. Mara watched as Colt adjusted the beams, ensuring that any approach would trigger alarms and misdirection. "They'll see this and think twice," Colt said, finally stepping back. "No one wants to chase shadows in a storm, especially if the shadows might bite, or worse, lead them into a trap." Mara laughed quietly. "I like it. Clever and safe." Colt smiled faintly. "Safety is the first rule out here. Survival is the second. Everything else comes later." They returned to the dome, tired but satisfied. Mara felt a strange mixture of excitement and calm. The illusions were not just clever, they were beautiful. The way the lights reflected off the snow, the way shadows danced across the ridge, it was almost magical. "You know," Mara said, sipping tea, "I never imagined a place like this could exist. A safe home in the middle of nowhere, protected by lights and machines and clever thinking. It takes work and patience, and someone willing to learn. Looks like you've got both." The rest of the night passed quietly. Mara stayed awake longer than usual, watching the auroras swirl overhead, feeling a sense of connection she hadn't felt in a long time. The ranch was alive, not just with machines and animals, but with strategy, care, and intention. She realized that Colt's defiance of the harsh world wasn't just about stubbornness. It was about protecting life, creating a space where even someone like her could survive. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the ridge, the scouts, or whoever was tracking her, watched. But for now, they were outsmarted. The ranch stood as a silent, protected fortress, full of warmth, light, and clever illusions. Mara closed her eyes, letting herself rest. She had learned much in a single day, about the ranch, about survival, and about trust. Tomorrow she would continue to learn, and together she and Colt would ensure that no one came close to the ranch without being seen, and without being outwitted. As sleep took her, she thought of the snow, the auroras, and the strange creatures that had welcomed her with soft nudges and gentle gazes. She realized that this frozen planet, this unusual ranch, and this determined rancher might just be the beginning of something more than survival. Maybe for the first time she had found a place where she could belong. And even as she slept, she promised herself quietly she would be ready for whatever came next. Whoever was tracking her, whoever wanted the cargo, Mara would not run. She would learn, adapt, and face the challenge with Colt's guidance. Out here, brains, preparation, and courage would win the day. The next morning, Vera, 6 sparkled under a pale sun. The auroras painted streaks of green and violet across the sky, reflecting off the snow and ice. The world seemed calm, but Mara knew that today might bring more challenges. The scouts, or whoever had been tracking her, were still out there. They had been observing the ranch carefully, trying to decide if it was worth approaching. Mara dressed quickly, pulling on warm layers and sturdy boots. She checked the sensors along the dome's perimeter and adjusted the energy fields. Colt was already outside, inspecting the pens and checking the creatures. The animals stirred gently, sensing the day's calm, but their movements were alert, ready to respond if anything unusual happened. "You're ready," Colt said quietly, noticing her careful work. "Today, we make sure nothing or no one gets past our defenses." Mara nodded. Her hands were steady and her mind focused. She had learned so much in the last 2 days, about the ranch, the creatures, the energy barriers, and the illusions. She understood now that survival was not about fighting, it was about being clever, prepared, and united. Colt and Mara walked along the ridge, checking the holographic projectors and drones they had placed the night before. Small, harmless lights flickered across the snow, projecting shadows of creatures that did not exist. Some shapes were enormous, towering over the dome, while others moved like silent sentinels across the ridge. Mara watched as a small drone hovered silently, scanning the distant horizon. "They'll think the place is alive," Mara said quietly, a small smile on her lips. "They'll think twice before approaching," Colt agreed. "Cleverness beats brute force every time." Hours passed slowly, the sun rising higher. Mara and Colt adjusted projectors, monitored the energy fields, and tested the drone's responses. It was Clip rolled along beside them, chirping encouragement and occasionally projecting harmless holograms of its own to confuse the scouts further. Mara felt a growing sense of confidence. They were ready for whatever came next. In the late afternoon, movement appeared on the ridge again. This time, it was clearer. Small figures moved cautiously across the snow, examining the illusions. Mara's heart beat faster, but she remained calm. She and Colt had prepared for this moment. "They're approaching," Colt said quietly. "Stay focused." Together, they activated a series of new holograms, projecting the images of towering creatures with glowing eyes and shimmering wings. The lights flickered across the snow, creating illusions of movement that seemed almost real. A faint hum from the energy fields added to the effect, making it feel as though the entire ridge was alive. Mara watched through binoculars as they hesitated, looking at the illusions and trying to make sense of what they saw. The smaller figures turned, apparently deciding that the dome was too dangerous to approach. Mara's heart lifted. Cleverness was working. Colt placed a hand on her shoulder. "See? No one wants to chase shadows." Mara smiled. "It's amazing. I've never done anything like this before." "Then consider this your first lesson in frontier survival," Colt said, a hint of humor in his voice. "Brains and preparation can protect more than weapons ever could." The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the snow. Mara and Colt returned to the dome to rest, but Mara's mind was already buzzing with ideas. She watched Clip move along the panels, adjusting the energy fields automatically, projecting small lights to reinforce the illusions outside. The dome was alive with activity, yet peaceful, safe, and controlled. That evening, Mara and Colt shared a quiet meal, reflecting on the day. Mara poured herself a cup of tea, feeling the warmth seep into her hands and chest. "You know," Mara said softly, "I never imagined a place like this could exist. A safe home in the middle of nowhere, protected by clever thinking and careful planning." Colt nodded. "Patience, and the willingness to trust someone else." "You've shown both, Mara. That's why you're still here, and why this place is still safe." Mara felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the tea. She realized that she had not just found protection, she had found someone she could trust. Colt's calm determination, combined with his kindness and intelligence, gave her hope that survival could also mean belonging. Later that night, Mara stood near the dome looking out at the auroras. The snow sparkled like diamonds, and the ridge seemed calm once more. Yet she knew that the universe was full of surprises. Whoever had been tracking her could return, but for now, the ranch was safe. She felt a quiet confidence that she could face the future. Colt joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've done well today," he said quietly. "Not just with the defenses, but with learning to think ahead. That's the most important skill out here." "Thank you, Colt. I feel like I finally understand what it means to survive, and maybe even to live." Colt smiled faintly. "Good. That's the idea. Survival is important, but living, that's the reward." As the night deepened, Mara and Colt returned inside. Clip rolled beside them, chirping softly, its glowing eyes scanning the dome for any anomalies. Mara curled up under a blanket, feeling safe for the first time in a long while. The storm outside was gone, the snow silent, and the ranch thriving under careful planning and teamwork. In the days that followed, Mara continued to learn and help. She adjusted the energy fields, monitored the drones, and helped Colt care for the bioengineered animals. She found joy in the small successes, keeping a pen safe during a sudden blizzard, correcting a projection that flickered too early, or helping a young creature navigate a slippery patch of ice. Each moment strengthened her skills and her confidence. And every night she watched the auroras, feeling a connection not just to the planet, but to the life she was building alongside Colt. The ridge remained quiet, and the distant scouts never returned. Mara realized that sometimes cleverness, preparation, and teamwork could solve problems better than confrontation. She had learned that survival didn't mean isolation. It meant using your mind, building trust, and finding allies who would stand with you. One morning, as the first light of the aurora stretched across the plains, Mara and Colt walked along the ridge. The air was crisp, the snow sparkling under the soft glow. Mara felt a sense of peace she had never known in her travels. "You've changed since the storm," Colt said, looking at her with a faint smile. "You've learned to trust, to plan, and to work with the world instead of against it. That's more than most travelers ever learn." Mara laughed softly. "And I've had a good teacher." Colt's eyes softened. "You've done more than learn. You've become part of this ranch, part of the life we protect here. And that's the most important lesson of all. She had found a home in the middle of a frozen wilderness, a place where she was valued, safe, and capable. She had learned to face challenges without fear, to think ahead, and to work alongside someone who cared for her well-being. As the sun rose higher, illuminating the snow-covered plains, Mara realized that she had not just survived the storm. She had found protection, friendship, and a sense of belonging. The ranch was thriving, the illusions keeping any potential threat at bay, and the creatures moved gently within their pens, safe and content. Mara smiled at Colt, who returned the gesture with quiet warmth. For the first time in a long while, she felt she could rest. The freighter, the cargo, and the unknown pursuers seemed far away, irrelevant for the moment. She was here, she was safe, and she had a place to call home. And as the auroras shimmered overhead, painting the sky with green and violet streaks, Mara quietly promised herself she would continue to learn, to adapt, and to protect the life she had found here. She would not run again. She would face whatever challenges came with intelligence, courage, and the strength of the bonds she had built. Out here, on a distant planet under the dancing auroras, Mara had discovered something far more important than survival. She had discovered a life worth protecting, and someone willing to stand with her to ensure it endured. The snowstorm had passed, the ridge was quiet, and the ranch hummed with life, and for the first time, Mara felt completely at peace.